Hey dudes. Yay! We're back. It's been a little while since I've read a DRAMIONE fanfiction. Gonna be totally honest with you. I fell off. I just fell off for a little bit. I don't know. I think I was too deep in. I think I burnt out, to be honest. But then something insane happened. Something actually insane happened. I open up my Spotify and I see a podcast on my homepage. A podcast, which is the audio fic, or whatever, of Secrets and Mess by Emerald Slytherin. Now, I believe this has been on my list for a long time, and I've heard whisperings about it here and there. Guys, why didn't you get me on this? You know how much I love Voldemort being the bad guy, right? Okay, so it seemed like a crazy happenstance that it showed up on my Spotify, and then I realized that there are 2 Harry Potter raps in my top 5 songs of the last 6 months on Spotify, and I guess that could give them an idea. Okay, I guess that could give them an idea. This is opening so many doors for me. I didn't even know that you could do this licensing wise legally. I did not know this was possible. But there are some other ones too that I've seen just from a few little searches here and there. So if you're interested in a much more user-friendly and mobile-friendly version of, like, audiobook version of fanfictions, then check out Spotify. This is the second one that I've listened to. First was Detraki. I listened to that just through AO3. That's difficult. It's kind of clunky. So that was harder to do, especially since that was so long. So I wish that I would have maybe even searched around for this, for that on Spotify. But anyway, now I know. Yeah, now Spotify knows me, I guess. Maybe they exchanged, like they talked to the AI being, and they exchanged a good algorithm for good wrapped. The important thing I want to talk about before we talk about this book is something that was kind of brought to my attention in some previous videos' comments that I would like to talk about now. If you do not want to talk about the fandom / fanfiction in general / etiquette, then you can skip. I'll put the timestamp on and you can skip to that time. I got some comments on some previous DRAMIONE videos which suggested that I didn't know the etiquette of the fanfiction realm, not this genre specifically, and also further that I broke those etiquette rules. You're right. You're actually right. I didn't know about a specific set of rules for consuming fanfiction and talking about it. That was new to me. Okay, so I did do some searching around, did do some Googling, and if you yourself also didn't know, I can give you the lowdown. Now, there's no official set as far as I know, as is the nature of the fact that this is fan fiction, but from what I gathered, this forum, that forum, Reddit, whatever, that there are some rules which a lot of people disagree on what specifically they are, but there are some big ones that I think most people agree on, which are don't complain if it's in the tags, and stop reading if you don't like it. Those are also the ones that I think that I would maybe be accused of breaking. So those are what I'm going to talk about. Other rules that are very, in my opinion, common sense would be like, don't dox authors, don't find them on other platforms and harass them, stuff like that, which I'm not even going to talk about that because it's like totally off the table. So first and foremost, I want to say that I don't mean to step on anyone's toes or hurt anyone's feelings. I'm not going out of my way to be mean in any way. I'm not trying to go after fandoms or authors or anything like that. The second thing that I want to say that I feel is just as important as that is that I'm not really planning on changing how I talk about fanfictions. I don't believe that I've said anything wrong or stepped over the line. I am cognizant of the fact that fanfiction authors are not professional authors. They're not, or at least to our knowledge, they may not be traditionally published authors, and therefore we shouldn't treat them like that. Traditionally published authors have a team behind them. They may have training about how to go about these things, which fanfiction authors do not. This makes them more likely to see criticism of their work and discussion of their work online. So I do try to focus even more on plot and characters and storyline rather than writing style and skill. But just like in my other book discussions or reviews or whatever you want to call them, I believe that reviews are for the readers, not for the writer. When it comes to not continuing on with a book or fan fiction because you didn't like it, I think that choice should be up to the reader. I mean, readers are allowed to be disappointed in lost potential or lost time investment, and they are allowed to have opinions. All of this is my opinion, of course, but I do think that it behooves fanfiction authors to have their work treated like traditionally published work. Many of them go on to become traditionally published authors, and there's not really anything negative that comes out of legitimate discussion and critique. Many of the fan fictions that I read are totally at the caliber to be traditionally published. There are some amazing authors writing fan fiction, and they deserve to be recognized and shared. That is my opinion. I do not believe in gatekeeping works. So there were also some questions about whether I am in the fan fiction realm. I am not. So I just want to clear that up. I'm not going into any spaces and, I don't know, commenting on authors, places where authors obviously are. I only have an AO3 account because there's some things you can only download with if you have an account. And I'm not on Reddit. I'm not on Tumblr. I'm not on, I don't know where people are talking about this stuff. I haven't, to my memory, I don't think I've written any Goodreads reviews of these. This is the only place I talk about these. And I'm doing that because I feel like, oh man, like I don't have anyone to talk about this stuff with in my real life. Wouldn't it be great if there was like a place where I could kind of review and talk about books that I'm never hearing people talk about? And I think that has been good. I think it has been, like, I think based on comments and stuff, that people have been enjoying the fact that they're able to discuss these books that you're not hearing about very often. Now, if you search for this netiquette surrounding issues, there's a lot of discussion going on about, fan fictions aren't meant to be treated like regular books. Authors don't mean for them to be treated like regular books. That goes against what I think. And honestly, sometimes it seems like some of the authors, don't even want anyone to be talking about their works at all. They don't want there to be Reddit forums about them. They don't want them to have a profile, each book to have a profile on Goodreads so people can write public reviews about them. And to all that, I just have to say, you can't really have your cake and eat it too. If you wanted it to be a public story, then people will have opinions about it. I mean, if you didn't want people to have opinions about it, you could have handwritten it and snail mailed it to all your friends. There's not really any way to stop discourse. And if it's reasonable discourse, there's no reason to stop it, in my opinion. Authors own their stories. I know this is fan fiction, so they don't own it goes against it a little bit, but their story that they are making, they created that. They own that. We all understand that. That is something that is theirs, that they are sharing with everybody. But the other side of the coin is that readers or consumers own their reactions and their opinions. If I were being outright mean or doxing or being inappropriate to the author, that would be a different conversation, I believe. But to push back against critique and discussion is what makes fandoms toxic. It makes people not want to join it. It hurts the people who are already in it. It hurts the people who want to get in it. And it inhibits growth. I read these stories because I love them, I would not waste my time on something that I did not love, or at least like, or at least want to see it through. And I love talking to other people about them. I love getting my feelings out about it. There's not a lot of spaces to do that in real life. And I don't want this little online space to be ruined, so I will continue talking about fanfiction. I'm not going to discourage discourse about this. I'm in the comments. I'm happy to hear what people think about this topic. I know that this is really something that a lot of people disagree on. So it can be kind of tough. Try to stay nice. But I'm happy to hear people's thoughts about this. You know, do you like when a fandom is small, and do you not want anyone to get in, and do you think that gatekeeping like that is okay? Apologize for if I hurt anyone's feelings, but I just want to make myself clear in that regard. And with that all said, let's move on to talking about the fanfiction. Okay, hello everyone again. Sorry, I did talk about this book a little bit that day, but then I lost my voice. I kind of had a sore throat and I completely lost my voice. So it's a couple days later. Sorry about that. So, talking about the book. This is by Emerald Slytherin. It's on AO3. It was published in 2021 and completed end of 2022. It is 454,000 words, 75 chapters. So it's pretty long. I don't actually know how long even the audiobook was because it was on Spotify as a podcast, so it was kind of hard to tell like how long the whole thing was. Every chapter is between 30 minutes and an hour. But on PDF, when you have the PDF, it's 1,064 pages. Those are like document pages. The rating is explicit, and I want to be really clear. It is extremely explicit. And you might be thinking sexually explicit? No. Well, I guess, but very heavy violence. When I was reading the audiobook, the narrator would be like, okay, there's like a trigger warning at the beginning of this chapter, take care of yourselves. And I don't know why her saying take care of yourselves was like, I will. Here are the archive warnings. Graphic depictions of violence, major character death, and rape/non-con. Other, I think, relevant or very pertinent tags. I mean, all the tags are important, but other ones are mental health issues, suicide, substance abuse, torture, psychological trauma, violent thoughts, character death, major character injury, slavery. So those are like big ones. I mean, they're all big, but those are big ones. And this was by far the most explicit one that I have ever read, and it was hard to read. And I'll get into that more later. So the background is that this is set 9 years after the events of the Battle of Hogwarts. However, we don't really hear anything about that, so we're kind of unclear as to what happened and what didn't happen for like half of the book. But we know like generally Battle of Hogwarts happened and Voldemort was not defeated. So Voldemort is the main big bad guy in this, and I've only read 3 other ones where Voldemort was the main big bad guy, and I love them. I think that Voldemort being the main villain is like the perfect thing for me. Manacled, The Auction, and Disappearances of Draco Malfoy. I think those are the only ones I've read where Voldemort was still the villain. And I just think that those are really good because it's hard in a fanfiction to build up a villain the way that Voldemort has, you know, the time that's been put into Voldemort being built up so much, and he's like the ultimate villain, you know, with the Horcruxes and everything, so it's difficult to make another villain as like bad as he is. So that's the background. Hermione is the main soldier of the Order. She's a really big part of the Order, and Draco is Voldemort's right-hand man. And they actually don't know that. The Order doesn't know that, but he is Voldemort's right-hand man. So Hermione, the author took a lot of inspiration from Manacled, especially the memory searching. That's what she says. The memory searching is a big part, and she took a lot from Manacled from the beginning, but it was not very similar in other ways. It also has that same kind of beginning as Manacled and The Auction. Those have some similar aspects to them, and this one does as well, but it really takes a turn and it becomes very different. Also, the author says that this is the first pretty much thing that they've ever written. Dyslexic and didn't have a beta. It may be beta now because it says that they're going through it. I would say the number one criticism of this, if you see this around like wherever you're getting your recommendations for, most people will mention, like, I really love this one, but the writing, like, you just have to get past the writing. And I would agree that the writing, especially in the beginning, is very, it's kind of has like an ultra modern feel to it. So it's a little bit, if you're really picky about writing style, it might be hard for you to read. It felt like a romantasy that, you know, came out last year. Like, that's kind of how it feels like. But skill, the writing gets so much better throughout the course of the story, and we love to see it. I think it's so great. You know, this author started doing a thing, practiced a lot, and got even better. So I think it was just great. But I will say that I didn't have my hopes up as far as, like, you know, character growth or plot twists or anything, because I was like, okay, I don't want to get my expectations too high, but I was blown out of the water. So don't worry about that. So I just want to say that stuff in the beginning. And then other things that I like to kind of categorize these fan fictions with are redemption arc. I'd say that I'd give the redemption arc about a 7 out of 10 because we'll get into that later. I'm actually not even going to talk about it all right now. Patronus rating is another thing I talk about. There was no Patronus reveal in this, which was a little sad. I think there could have been one. It could have been cool, but whatever. There was no death. There was no Dementors, I think, at all. Maybe very little in the in some of the battles, but otherwise there was no Dementors. Wizarding World of Harry Potter realness, I would give this, I would say it's pretty real. They use a lot of potions, and you know, there's a story as blood curse, and there's like anti-magic potion and stuff like that. I will say realness, magic realness, maybe slightly less than Manacled, but there is a lot of magic in it. There's also a lot of, which some fan fictions do this, there's a lot of muggle stuff too, which is fine. There's a lot of guns and like tanks and muggle soldiers and stuff. Not just fine, but kind of cool. I feel like it makes it more realistic to the real world, as in, like, Voldemort is so big and so bad that everyone is getting involved. Ron bashing, I think there was not much Ron bashing. Everything that he did was pretty much in line with his character. He was only in a couple scenes, but he acted very much like you would think. Like, there was never anything that he did where I was like, he would never do that. It was all very like, yeah, that's Ron. So he was annoying. Just gonna say, okay. He was annoying. So then getting into characters, we have a little bit of an ensemble cast here. Supporting characters to Draco and Hermione were Astoria Zabini, née Greengrass, Theodore Nott, Blaise Zabini, some house elves, Daphne Nott in death. She died. She's already died by the beginning of the story. Daphne Greengrass, sorry, who married Theodore Nott. And then characters that we don't see very often, but they play a part, would be Voldemort, obviously, Barty Crouch Jr., Harry, Ron, Kingsley, and like a little bit of Ginny, and a tiny bit of Fleur. Then there's other characters that come in and out, like they're mentioned plenty of times. Almost everyone. I feel like everyone in the books is mentioned, but it's like just a mention. Then going into characterization of the main two, I do like to talk about, like, do I think that they could be like this, you know, based on what they were like in the original books? Now, it's hard to say because this is 9 years later, and they've been adults for 9 years, and they've been going through a war for 9 years. Hermione definitely doesn't fall into that, like, perfect Hermione trope. She is cruel. She is a hardened soldier. She kills people. She's already killed a bunch of people. She doesn't have those know-it-all or like girl next door traits that she has in the books that kind of make her her. So I will say that Hermione had less resemblance to original books Hermione than I've seen in other ones, like even less than Draco did in this. She was pretty much just a girl. I don't think, like, she could have been anyone, you know, a little bit. We didn't see her like searching in books for solutions or like troubleshooting a ton of times and like tinkering around. Like, we heard about her doing that kind of, but that was not a big part of her personality. She thinks about like death and killing people. She killed people unapologetically. She doesn't feel any remorse. Well, I don't want to say that. She definitely feels remorse, but it's super deep. It's not one of the first emotions that comes out when it comes to killing people. She definitely feels more remorse than Draco, but I almost think that that's kind of her virtue signaling a little bit that she's like, well, I'm better than him. Of course, I feel a little remorse because I'm not a Death Eater, but it's like, do you actually feel remorse? Once the story gets going, she often thinks about like how to mutilate Draco. Specifically, how to, like, the specific way in which she will mutilate him. So that was a little bit more tough, I'd say. It was a different Hermione than I'm used to. Then going into Draco, there are aspects of Draco that I'm fine with ignoring from the book, from book Draco. I think we can all agree. Me always saying, I think we can all agree on something that maybe we cannot all agree on. That Draco's kind of like he's kind of book Draco. A little bit of a coward, a little bit of a, soft. He's like a follower through and through. He just like does what other people tell him, and then if the thing is too hard, he's just gonna be like anxious about it and not do it. That is a facet of his personality that I could take it or leave it. It's fine if he's not like that. However, I don't believe, or it takes a lot for me to really believe that he could become the biggest, the baddest, with no doubts. So in Manacled, he was a spy in that, or spy is not the right word. He had a kind of a complexity about him. In this, he is so battle hardened, and he is the worst. I mean, he's the worst. It's him and Bellatrix are the number. So it's like, he is as bad. He's worse than Bellatrix, pretty much. So it is a little bit hard to believe that he doesn't have any of that, like, I think that his mother plays a big part in his personality and the reasons he is the way that he is. In this, it's like, he just loved her, but his love for her didn't change him at all. It didn't make him more of a loving person and nothing like that. So it was a little bit hard to be like, oh yeah, this is Draco, because he's just bad. I don't want to get into spoilers just yet, so I'm not going to say the big thing about him that was kind of confusing to me. But all in all, I think he resembled Draco of the books, but he was a little bit too all in, I think, to be so real to me. So I wouldn't give the realness to book versions of them. I wouldn't give it a super, super high score, but that's fine. I mean, if that's, we can talk all day about what we think they would be like after 9 years of wars. They could be like, who knows? Who knows? Like, they were literally kids and now they're not kids anymore. So people change so much. So whatever. She didn't do a bad job. I'm just letting you know what I thought about that. So getting into the spoilers, I wanted to kind of talk about the characters and everything a little bit first before I got into the spoilers, because if you haven't read this, I really suggest you read it. Okay, if it sounds like something you would like. There are 3 really big reveals that I will be talking about that I would love to talk with you about after you've read it. Unless you really think that, because of the trigger warnings and stuff, it's not going to be for you, and I would suggest reading it, okay, and then coming back later and talking about it. I would love to hear what people thought about this one and everything, so, and I don't want to mess up anybody's experience reading it. So getting into it. I kind of separated it into parts. In my opinion, there's kind of 3 parts. It's not like that in the book, but I kind of felt like there's 3 parts. First part is chapters 1 through 18 or 19. So just going through plot points, and then I'll talk about my thoughts after that. She's high up in the order, as I said already. She meets a spy. I don't know how often, but she's meeting a spy called Medusa. Both of their identities are hidden when they do this, but it's a guy. We can guess who it is, She goes to a battle. He flies in on his dragon. Draco has a dragon. And he captures her. Now, the dragon aspect of it, I was getting a little bit of Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon thing, because the dragon lore is very similar to that lore, but it's not talked about that much, so I'm not going to go into it. When she's in the house, she has free reign. Kind of surprising. She can't hurt herself or anything, but she can walk anywhere in the house, essentially. After about a month or 2, she finds out that Astoria Zabini now lives there as well. And Astoria is kind of an interesting character now, generally in these past fanfiction that I've read, Astoria is kind of the like ditzy one, and Astoria is kind of the like serious one, and Daphne is like the ditzy one, but in this one Astoria is kind of ditzy. She has a blood curse. Hermione doesn't know about it yet, but like we know it. But she's super nice to Hermione, and she doesn't want to hear the word mudblood. So I'm kind of thinking, does she know what they're doing out there? Draco tries to get into Hermione's memories over and over again every single day. He finally makes it past the door, you know, and he makes it to some of her memories. And he watches them meticulously. She's thinking, kind of weird that he's watching, like, my 6th birthday party. But she's successfully hiding her important memories from him. But he watches, like, everything from the very beginning of time, almost. And it makes her kind of sick, fighting him in her mind to keep him out. And so she gets, like, nosebleeds and all this stuff. That goes on for 18 chapters. Okay, she also finds out that the other boys live there too, Theo and Zabini. And I was like, oh yeah. We love a little trio. We love having the boys around. But we don't get a lot of them. And their relationship with each other is a little bit strange. Theo is, like, crazy. He's super crazy. And Zabini is also a little bit crazy, but he's more on the stoic side. So ending out this part is the demon hex. So essentially, Draco takes Hermione to a battle, and he says some words in Latin, essentially putting her under like a trance, and she kills Seamus under this trance. Okay, the demon hex was something that he had to put into her brain, so that's why he watched all her memories, so that he could like meticulously instill this something, I don't know. And he uses, he'll like turn it on when they're in battle, and all of the like good parts of her brain will be gone, and she'll just kill the order. And she's really crazy. She really kills him. Anyway, she kills Seamus, and it's like a huge shock to her. And she finds out that she's, you know, under Draco's control. And that was to be honest, that was kind of the first reveal. If I were to say there's 4 reveals, that would kind of be the first one, because that was actually so shocking. I had no idea. Like, it was a very unique idea. So it's kind of an interesting part. So she wears Death Eater robes and everything. She's out there killing Order members. So I kind of put that as end of first section. So here are my thoughts on it. The second that they're alone in his house, which is like chapter 3, they're very talkative. They're like bantering. And like they hate each other, and it's like hate banter, but it's still, they're like bantering. I'm thinking they're a little too personable. Okay, it was a little bit strange for me. The transition was a little bit strange. But by the end of this, like him searching her memories part, that side of their relationship is gone. So it was only in the very beginning, so it kind of bothered me at the time, but I actually forgot about it until I looked at my notes, because that doesn't last very long. The house elves in the house are very nice and talkative, which is indicative of how they're being treated. So we get a little bit like, oh yeah, obviously Draco's good, and like also he's Medusa, he's the spy, so we know that he's good. Hermione doesn't know yet, but we know it, right? I was getting kind of Fira, what is her name from Court of Thorns and Roses? I was getting a little bit of Fira vibes from this story at the beginning. It was like, okay, she's stuck in his house, she hates him, and she thinks he's a bad guy, but he's not really a bad guy. And she's like kind of fiery, and she's like always talking back, and always trying to get out or like kill herself or something. And then she started painting. I was like, oh man, this is really similar. But I actually also forgot about that too, because it's gone really fast too. There is so much alcoholism in this book. There's so much alcoholism and so much drinking. It was just to show how messed up they are that Daphne died. So everybody is really upset about Daphne dying, and Hermione kind of finds this out slowly, but essentially she finds out that Daphne died. She may have already known it. But anyway, it becomes clear that it was like a hit to everyone in the house when they are soon after she meets Astoria. Hermione does pull a Harry from the 5th Harry Potter book, and she actually says, you're going to go into my mind, I'm going to go into your mind. She goes into Draco's mind, and she sees the public execution of Daphne, and how Voldemort killed both of Draco's parents in front of him. Very brutally. And Daphne's execution was also very brutal. So that kind of gives her some insight into Draco and why he's so hardened. And then also like how much Daphne means to everyone in the house, and how, like, important her death was to them. So moving into section 2, this is about chapter 19-ish to chapter 37 or 38. This section is huge, obviously, as you can tell. It's a lot of them going into battle, her killing people, so much killing people, so much getting home and screaming and crying about it and breaking stuff. She also maybe kind of enjoys the killing while she's doing it, but then later she's like even more upset that she's upset that she did it, and she's upset that she kind of enjoyed it. Draco kind of comforts her almost. Like, he seems like he feels a little bit bad about what he's making her do, somewhat. We do get some dual POV with Draco, and then down the line we get some with Theo as well, which is quite interesting. Also, Blake. Honestly, we get a few different point of views, and to be frank, sometimes it was kind of hard to tell whose point of view it was once you get started out, but we see them getting closer. Sexual tension is through the roof. They obviously don't like each other. Like, they literally hate each other, but still there's sexual tension, of course. There's a lot of explicit torture, not of Hermione, of other characters, mostly by the hands of Theo. And I like, it was actually super hard to read because he like enjoys it. So I think there's a difference between, I know, don't complain about things that are in the tags, but I think there's a difference between the tag torture and reading pages and pages of it, and the person whose point of view you're reading from is enjoying it. A little bit hard. We see Barty Crouch Jr. for the first time. We see his doll house. He has a house of women whose voices he's taken away, who are under his control pretty much. You can guess the rest. I'm not going to say it. There's some mystery with one of the dolls at the house, though. When she sees Theo, she kind of freaks out. He's thinking, what's that about? And he has like a little bit of a feeling when he sees her. They kiss. Another thing that happens in this section is they kiss. They sleep together. They also like shoot. She shoots him. He asks her to shoot him. I don't know. It was okay. Hermione wrestles with the dichotomy that she's feeling between, being disgusted by Draco and kind of like being kind of into him, or maybe a little turned on, or maybe thinking he's not that bad. She wrestles with that dichotomy, definitely, because she sees him. Her moment of like, oh my gosh, I'm in too deep, was she saw him smiling while Theo kicked around or played with a recently decapitated head. One that he had recently decapitated. Somebody from the Order who Hermione had known. It was like, there was a lot of that kind of stuff. And then he defends himself later when she calls him out. He defends himself and is like, I've seen Theo go through so much. His wife was killed in front of him. I'm thinking, okay, well, he had quite the turnaround. And you have an interesting friendship if you're like being supportive by being happy that he's found happiness in brutally torturing people. Anyway, next. I know, I'm talking about my thoughts. I shouldn't be talking about my thoughts yet. I'm supposed to do that at the end. But we get our first, in chapter 30, we get our first Horcrux. The first word Horcrux is said in chapter 30. And it was like, it took me out for a second. I was like, oh, whoa, wait a second. It was shocking because I'd already read some. We come to find out that they did not find the diadem. And they did not kill Nagini. So Nagini is still there. I think near the middle-ish of this book, they get the diadem. They find the diadem and they kill it. And then she knows, or they know, that Voldemort has made another Horcrux. We later find out it's the medallion. It's called the medallion, okay? So we find out that he still has 2 Horcruxes. And we're made to believe, of course, that we know what happened with Narcissa in the Battle of Hogwarts. So we're made, Harry's Horcrux is Gonzo. At least we know that, okay? This is what I mean about, I said earlier, we didn't really know what really happened. You do have to do a little bit of figuring out by yourself as far as what actually happened from the last book. But yeah, that's what happened. So he has 2 Horcruxes left. And then they do another battle. Hermione breaks out of the hex to not kill Harry, to avoid killing Harry, and it's like shocking that she was able to break out of it. Voldemort finds out, really upset. They go to Voldemort, and he had just killed, I think, Goyle. And then he's really upset. He invades Hermione's mind and shows her her death, which is like he got visions from a seer of all these things that were supposedly going to happen in the war. Pretty much she saw Voldemort winning, and she saw Draco killing her with his dragon. So Voldemort goes into her mind and shows her that. And that was kind of shocking for her because they're kind of close at this point, and she doesn't believe that he would do something like that to her. And she also hates the feeling of Voldemort in her brain. It takes her a long time to kind of... In fact, she never really loses it. Like, she's always like, I'm burning up. I need to, take a cold bath or something, because she's, like, burning up, thinking about having Voldemort in her brain. We find out Blaise is actually the seer who had those visions. So, he's pretty believable, right? But actually, he is. He's actually very reliable. The boys... Then we have a scene where the boys are with Voldemort. I don't remember what they were doing, but they were with Voldemort, and some of the house elves come and say Astoria fell down the stairs. She's bleeding out. Voldemort won't let them go back, and he also doesn't let the house elves go back. Hermione's the only one there. They are not able to come back for hours, and I think Blaise is the first one that comes back, and he is so... Pretty much Hermione saved her life. She just used Muggle methods, and she saved Astoria's life. Blaise is extremely thankful. He is like on his knees thanking Hermione. Later he like makes her tea. He calls her Hermione, which is big because we don't even get that from Draco until the 9th hour. And so that was kind of a big scene, and it was like it really changed everyone's opinion of Hermione in the house, or at least the 2 other boys' opinion of Hermione. Soon after that, Blaise finds out about where the meeting is going to be between the spy and the Order member. And he's like, oh, I'm going to get him. Oh, I'm going to get him. And so he goes and he finds out, he unveils it. Not in front of the Order member. I think it was maybe before the meeting. And he unveils it, and it's Theodore Nott. Which, at that point, I was starting to think, okay, maybe it's... I almost thought like maybe it was Blaise, but then he was going to find out. He was like going to see who it was, so it couldn't have been him. Then I was like, maybe it's Astoria, but then I was like, no, it's a man. So I thought, and the very right before he revealed it, I was like, it's probably going to be Theo. That was surprising. That was surprising for me. Okay, next. We find out that it's been Theo, but it's actually been Astoria. Astoria has been giving Veritaserum to Death Eaters, like at galas and stuff, getting information, giving it to Theo. Theo takes it to the Order member. She's like too weak, and also she's a girl, and it would have been more obvious like who she is, I think. So it's the both of them, and she calls herself Medusa because Medusa is like getting secrets from all of the snakes. Isn't that kind of cool? I thought that was kind of cool. And then Blaise all of a sudden is like, they have like a meeting. Blaise goes back to the house, and he ties up Theo, and then everyone comes. Draco comes, Hermione comes, everybody comes back, and they have this whole long discussion about it. And Blaise pretty much says, if Astoria's in the Order, so am I. Ugh. Blaise, as usual, so amazing. I feel like it's been a while since I read a fic where he was so amazing, or he was like actually even a character. He was so amazing. Draco, however, has to think on it. Now, my thoughts on part 2. Draco does like a soft launch on some like pet names and sweet nothings for Hermione for when she's like having a cool down from the demon hex, specifically after she killed Seamus. And it's kind of interesting. I'm thinking, why is he calls her Little Lion. I'm thinking, where is this coming from? Is he already in love with her? I mean, I'm thinking he's down bad. Their closeness doesn't necessarily not make sense, but I'm thinking they're majorly trauma bonded. That's where this is coming from. It's difficult for me to really... Okay, once the big reveal came, it was really hard for me to understand his character period altogether. I will say, okay, so here's what I want to actually talk about. His character made much less sense to me after I found out that he was not the spy. Of course, I'm sure it was her intention, but of course I was assuming that Draco was the spy this whole time. The manacled piece, everything, it just made me feel like, okay, it's Draco, obviously. When I found out that it was not him, I'm thinking, okay, his character makes much less sense. Why was he so nice to her in as much as, like, only hurting her when he needs to? Like, given how bad all of the other characters are, he's not torturing her or anything. He's just going into her memories. He lets her go throughout the entire house. He lets her talk to the house elves. He lets her hang out with Astoria. He's very, like, he really, like, she's totally human to him. It seems like he has no ill will toward her, beside that he, like, has to search her memory, as far as, you know, that's what Voldemort wants him to do. So, and then his, like, getting a little bit closer to her, feeling like they are kind of comfortable with each other, and, like, actually maybe kind of like each other, and there's this, like, crazy sexual tension, and they also, like, make out, and they also have sex, really made it seem like, okay, he's already done his, like, the redemption arc. It's kind of already happened. Didn't have anything to do with her. It's kind of already done. And she's just coming in and, like, solidifying it. Well, then we come to find out that, like, he actually, and when we see Daphne being killed, and his reaction to that, and he says he watches that memory every single day. His reaction to that, and then also seeing his parents be killed right in front of him. I'm thinking, there's almost no reason for him to be on Voldemort's side, beside that it's, like, just what he's done. You know, there's a lot of big things that have happened that would cause him to be like, okay, we're donezo, like, I'm out. But he is shocked when he finds out that his friends have been being spies, even though they have such a good reason to, because of everything that's happened to Daphne. Their whole reasoning, of course, is Daphne. And so, honestly, in that scene where Voldemort wouldn't let them go back to Astoria, I'm thinking, these are three guys who are very high up and are very skilled. Why don't they just kill him? I mean, they know about the Horcruxes, but it's like, just kill him and then kill him again and then kill him again. You know, I mean, to me, it was like, just do it. Like, just, how can you be okay with this guy? I mean, the brainwashing, I'm not seeing so much, because it's like, Voldemort gives me power, bro. Voldemort gives me this. We don't see that at all. And it's like, you're a Malfoy and a Black. You already have power. You already have, you know, money and everything. You could go into hiding, you could do anything. You do not have to be with the Order. You don't have to be a spy, but being his number one man makes so much less sense after we saw everything that Voldemort has put him through. It's like, how can he follow this guy? And then he even has to think about it. So he has this kind of emotional, this, like, moment with Hermione, like, kind of an emotional confession of how, like, she's kind of humanizing him. She's making occlumency harder, and all these things that we kind of knew already, but it's nice to hear them from his mouth. But even then, I'm thinking, this is the conversation where he's gonna be like, okay, and I'm actually totally against Voldemort now. I can't believe I didn't do it earlier. But actually, that was not the conversation. He still had to go off and think about it for a long time. So it was kind of shocking, honestly. And then this is the section also, this second section is where we see a lot of this torture. And we get it from Draco's point of view, we get it from Theo's point of view. We're seeing torture, and it's, in my opinion, it was kind of unnecessary. I think they could have left out like 80% of it, and it wouldn't have changed the story at all. And it would have been, you know, available to a wider audience, because it is so, I'm sure, I am positive that people have stopped reading this simply because the torture was a little bit too explicit. I didn't enjoy reading it, and most of it was not for any purpose, especially the way that it was written so explicitly. It just makes you feel like, okay, we're leaning into P word that I'm not going to say. It's a little bit torture P word, and it's like, that's not what I'm interested in reading. So that part of it was a little bit hard. So it's chapter 38 when we learn who Medusa is, and we see Draco wrestling with that idea. There is an interesting part of that where she has noticed that his eyes are gray, which we've been knowing his eyes are gray, right? But he has like blue. Okay, when she saw the memory of his mother dying, before his mother died, she explained how to occlude, which her explanation of it was, imagine this shard of glass, and now imagine it growing and growing and like encasing your whole body. And so, reality being that his eyes are actually blue, but they're gray because he's like occluded everything. And what we're really seeing is like that glass exterior rather than like him. So she will notice that his eyes are like kind of blue when he's being vulnerable, but they're gray when he's really occluded. And I thought that the idea was really interesting. It was carried a little too far, in my opinion. It was mentioned a lot. I don't love when eye color is mentioned a lot. It kind of takes me out of the story. because like really how often are people noticing that? You know, even though his are changing, it was used as a plot device a little bit too often, but I thought the idea was really, really cool. And then, yeah, at the end of chapter 38, he says, I won't kill for him anymore, which I was thinking, great. That's been a long time coming. That is end of part 2, getting into part 3. This is chapter 38 through 75, actually through 73, 74, and 75 are both epilogues. There's 2 epilogues. So I would say by this point, writing style has improved dramatically. It's almost almost unrecognizable from the beginning of the book. The scenes that need to be drawn out are perfectly drawn out. It just is like it has you on the edge of your seat, and there's so many twists in this story that it's like, I mean, we already got that Medusa reveal, so that was the first one. And it just is the way things are revealed is so perfect. The way that characters are written is really good. And then just like there's so many scenes where like, you know, something's about to be revealed, and it's perfectly written. So I thought I was so impressed by the way that the writing had improved. Chapter 40, they go to an order meeting, or they set up an order meeting to pretty much tell the order that they've changed sides. They watch Hermione's memory to prove what she's saying is true. Fleur watches it first, and she's very understanding. She sees her relationship with Draco, and she's very understanding. Then Ron watches it, and I'm thinking, whose idea was this? Whose idea was this? Goes horribly. Everyone's yelling, and they pretty much storm out. Ron storms out. But anyway, point is that the Order did contact them eventually and said, we need a Horcrux from you for you to really be pardoned in the end. Like, we're not going to accept help from you, and you're not going to be pardoned unless you bring us a Horcrux. Draco is really upset about that because he's like, what does he think it's so easy? By the way, Kingsley is at the head of the Order, as he normally is. So they plan for a very long time about how to get the Horcrux, and they also plan how to take down Voldemort, which is, their plan is to essentially do it from the inside and make him believe that one of his inner circle is a spy, take that spy out, make him believe it was actually a different member of the inner circle, and, you know, over and over again. From chapters 43 to 49, that's not exact, but generally from 43 to 49, it's a little bit slow, okay? The calm before the storm was, like, calming a little too hard. It's, like, a lot of planning, some montages of them taking out Death Eaters. It was just a lot. And then also battles where she's under the hex and blah, blah, blah. They do end up finding the Horcrux. That was kind of hard, and that was interesting and kind of cool to read. They get the Horcrux. She hands it to Ginny. Bellatrix sees her handing it to Ginny. Bellatrix is like, she's the spy. She makes Draco prove his loyalty by killing Hermione. And so she's stuck in that. She's like on the post, and the dragon is in front of her, and she's like, this is the moment. This is the moment that I've been seeing where I'm going to die. And in the final second, he kills a bunch of Death Eaters with the dragon instead. And so then it's revealed that they are the spies. They go into hiding. One of the final moments before they go into hiding, Theo actually gets, I don't know what, he gets stopped or something. He gets captured by Barty Crouch Jr. Barty Crouch Jr. tortures him a lot, which we hear about in great detail. Has his dolls involved. The mysterious doll is there. The mysterious doll actually is starting to gets Theo out. Draco and Hermione come to get Theo as well. They all meet. Barty Crouch finds out, and he comes in, and it's like Draco, Hermione, Theo. I don't know if Blaise is there. I feel like he probably is. Barty Crouch Jr., the mysterious doll, all of them are there. Barty Crouch is like, now's the time, and we're coming up on our second reveal. And she had teased it pretty well. The author had teased this one pretty well, so actually, I think everyone knew who it was. It was a polyjuiced. It was actually Daphne. So he had switched, using polyjuice, he had made another prisoner into Daphne. They killed that prisoner in front of everybody, and he stole Daphne away and had her in the polyjuice of this other girl. Now, there's a few parts of that don't make sense, which is that he must have taken a ton of that girl's hair, because he's been polyjuicing her for 6 years to look like that girl who died that day. And I mean, does it even work if the person is dead? You know, because in that case, wouldn't Barty Crouch Jr. have killed Mad-Eye Moody and just taken his hair the whole time? Anyway, whatever. But it is interesting kind of bring back, because I feel like I never hear about Barty Crouch Jr. in these fanfictions, so it's kind of cool to have him come back and a little bit of a, you know, part 2 of his polyjuice story. You know, he loves a little polyjuice. So that was interesting, and it was like, oh my gosh, that was a big reveal. So anyway, they go into hiding with Daphne, and they get to lay low for a little bit because that medallion they had given to the Order that she gave to Ginny was destroyed. So Voldemort's having a little bit of a hard time, and so they're just lying low for a bit. They go to the Order to do some planning or something, and then we get the third big reveal. This is just a couple chapters after the last big reveal. This is chapter 62. And they go in there, and they have a compass which points toward Horcruxes, and it's spinning like crazy, spinning like crazy. Well, then it lands on Hermione. Yeah, oh my gosh. And the reveal was so intense. It was so amazing. I couldn't believe it. It was awesome. It was so well done. It was so well done. And I had no idea. I mean, it blindsided me. It was so amazing. Draco takes her away. He's like, not today. And he is out of there. Well, he has a big fight with them first. Then he's out of there. Then she's like being, okay, I'm the lamb to the slaughter, and he's like gonna be the dragon who's not gonna let anyone touch her, and they have, you know, she's like, I'm ready, you know, whatever, and he's like, and you're not gonna sacrifice yourself, and also he doesn't trust Kingsley. He thinks the second Kingsley gets a chance, he's gonna off Hermione, and he's also thinking like, I should have known, I should have seen this. They try and find ways to get the Horcrux out of her, and they seem like they might be getting somewhere, like they're starting to get somewhere with that. We also get a little bit of a confession from Draco. Like, he kind of says that he loves her. And they also are, like, planning their, you know, alternate life. And, like, I don't know. It's, like, kind of cute, I guess, the two of them. But she is, like, probably going to... I'm thinking, how are they going to get out of this? That's what I'm thinking. So then Voldemort attacks the Order, and Kingsley, Ginny, Ron, Harry... all the important people didn't die. They come to the safe house, and Draco's like, what the heck are you doing here? He's really upset. Anyway, they're like, okay, well, whatever. The fact is, we've got to attack Voldemort. Better together than separate. They use Hermione as bait. They go to attack Voldemort. And there's a huge battle. Tons of people die. Ron, tons of people. So many people. And then then Neville kills Nagini, and Hermione is like, you have to try a final time to get this Horcrux out of me. So they're like hugging together. Her and Draco are like hugging together and trying to get the Horcrux out. And he's actually doing it. He's like pointing it at her chest or something, and this like smoke is coming out, and she can kind of feel like it's happening, you know, like it's coming out. Well, this scene was perfectly written. Perfectly written. It was so good. Essentially, Kingsley stabs her in the back with the Sword of Gryffindor while they're hugging, and Draco, the way it was written was just perfect. And anyway, Blaise sees, he comes up, he kills Kingsley, of course. Hermione is like dying, and I'm thinking, he's like, there's gotta be a way to save her. He's like going insane, going crazy, and everyone is standing around. Who knows where Voldemort is? I thought he was already dead. But anyway, everyone's standing around in shock. She dies in his arms. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I've ever read a single one where one of the characters died. I was shocked. I was so floored. I couldn't believe it. Even though there was a major character death tag, I didn't think that it would be one of the main characters. I thought it would be like, you know, Theo or somebody else, you know. Shocking, okay? Shocking. Well, then Draco, you know, as I said, he loses it. Before waiting for anybody else or anything, he goes to find Voldemort. Ooh, and this chapter was from, or this part of the chapter was from Voldemort's point of view, and it was amazing. The fear of realizing that Draco is coming to find him. The realization that his biggest mistake was not killing Draco when he had the chance. Like when he killed the parents. Like he should have ended the line right there. Just thinking about like how this, like Draco has become the most formidable of all of them. And it's all because of a Muggle-born girl. And just the power and all this. And I knew, like they had talked about it a few times, that like Voldemort should die by a gun, because that's like the thing that he hates the most, and he's gonna find out like how powerful they really are. They're powerful enough to kill you, and he does it. Okay, so Draco comes in. It's in a church, and it's pouring outside. There's a huge thunderstorm, and like the worst like Voldemort's worst nightmare shows up. And he's got Hermione's gun, and he shoots Voldemort like in the arm, in the hand, of the ball, whatever, to kind of like draw it out. And right before he's about to shoot him dead, Voldemort starts talking, and he starts using the one power that he has, which is convincing people to do stuff. He gets in Draco's head, which I thought of all of the entire book, this was the scene where Draco was the most Draco of the books. He's being convinced in the 9th hour, the second he has Voldemort in his clutches, he's being convinced by Voldemort that he's like, we can do it, like we can bind them together, we can take the order down, like they were the ones who killed her, we can do, like we can work together, and like we are the most powerful, blah, blah, blah. And like he's actually getting to Draco. And then he curses him with a Sectum Sempra. Voldemort curses Draco with a Sectum Sempra. Oh! And Draco is down bad from that. Okay, he's absolutely, like, he's dying. He finally shoots Voldemort, kills him. Friends show up beside Astoria because she's still doing really bad. And he dies in their arms before Astoria gets there. Oh! What? Both of the main characters died, and I was shocked. I mean, this was definitely to rival the death of Voldemort in Manacled. I mean, that with Ginny, ooh, that was so sweet. This, maybe even sweeter. Just the way that it was written from Voldemort's perspective, seeing how far he's fallen, how much he's come, like how much he like regrets not killing, seeing what a big deal Draco was going to be to him. It was just perfectly done. After that, we get a epilogue from Daphne's perspective. She's just doing, she's living, she's doing therapy. Zabini and Astoria, Blaise and Astoria adopted Ron's daughter with, who was a baby when he died. It was with Romilda Vane. And, because both of her parents died, so they adopted her. Then they adopted some other kids, and there's kids running around, and it's so sweet. But that was it. That was it pretty much. And then there was a second epilogue, which was which was Draco and Hermione meeting in the afterlife. And that was very sweet. I personally didn't feel that it was necessary. I almost felt like maybe the author was writing it so that she didn't get, burned at the stake by fans. But I personally did not need it. But it was sweet. It was really sweet. It did kind of tie in with this idea that they had the whole time, that like something as simple as death is not going to separate us. They had said something like that many times. So it was in the end, it was like, okay, it all ties in. But, and it was nice to see, he got to see his mom and stuff, and his dragon, of course. His dragon died too, and he got to see his dragon. So that was really, very sweet. But to me, I'm thinking, I mean, they can travel over the whole world, but like, what is this afterlife? Like, do things actually change? Are they there forever? Is that really enjoyable? Let's not get into that. So I've already said so many thoughts, but let me just see if I have any extra thoughts to find in the last part. I don't know if I said this already, but when they're trying to find that Horcrux, they have pretty much a sleeping together montage. Chapter 43 or something. And I just felt like that was like kind of out of place almost, because it was like, well, they don't love each other and don't like each other, but that was where their relationship kind of went from like, I want to gouge your eyes out, to I wouldn't mind waking up next to those eyes in your body. And it was I won't say it was jarring or anything, because like we know it's going down this path, and it's going down the path really, but it didn't really feel necessary to me at all. And plus, it was kind of out of place in that they're kind of trying to bamboozle Voldemort on a huge scale. And just doing that felt like they're going to get caught or something. They didn't get caught, until they got caught. Or it wasn't because of that they got caught. But Draco's soft spot for her was his downfall. But since they were already swimming together, it was like she already knows everything. I felt like Victory would have been so sweet if she didn't know that he was having those feelings for her and he saved her. I don't know. Whatever. I just wasn't so crazy about it. Call me a prude. And then we get a lot of scenes of Daphne torturing Barty Crouch Jr. And she loves it. Like, they have date nights, torture date nights, where they just, like, go down there and torture, like, light some candles and torture Crouch. I could have done without that. I don't know. Like, I don't know. And then the other thing is, finding out that Daphne was alive should have changed more than it did. The only reason that Theo is anti-Voldemort is because he killed Daphne. He doesn't care about blood purity or anything. So I was thinking they need to be checking him, because he's kind of a loose cannon and he could careen in any direction after finding out that Daphne's actually alive. Then also, it's like Daphne didn't really have any reason to be with the Order either. She's just with the Order inexplicably all of a sudden, after she died. So, and she didn't really betray, she was killed because she betrayed the Dark Lord, but that actually didn't happen. So it was kind of, I'm thinking, they actually aren't good. They're not with the Order, they just are not with Voldemort. So what's their story? And I mean, now that Daphne's not dead, maybe they even are with Voldemort. So that was a little bit, their characters made a little bit less sense at that point. And then another thought that I had was that obviously the author has no line, so I was thinking, I thought it would have been cool if they did kill Voldemort and Hermione was the last Horcrux, and we got to see what it was like, if Voldemort became her, how would the consciousness transition to her, and what would Draco do? I mean, that would have been crazy, right? So anyway, I thought that would have been interesting. But yeah, that was the whole story. That's actually everything. I'm so curious to hear people's thoughts on this one. I feel like it was such a roller coaster. Like, the reveals, the number of reveals, the way the reveals were revealed, I thought it was just really, really well done. Loved the story. I thought it was so cool. What did you think of the story, the reveals of Daphne, of Theo, of Draco's character, of him not being the spy? Did you think he was not the spy? Did you think it made sense that he was not the spy? So many questions. So many questions. Loved reading this. Loved talking about it. And I will catch you in the next one.